Internet, welcome back. I believe this might be episode number 6. We're now in Angola, and I have here with me former Sergeant Major SW Fourie, SW as we call him. Sometimes I call him SW because that's what my wife calls him. I think his friends might call him Skulk, and of course his children will call him Dad or Daddy. And they're wonderful children, I just want to tell you. Fantastic kids. Now, SW, can you tell us what was happening in Angola? Because we finished up with Mozambique now, we finished with your selection. We even talked about explosives. That was a wonderful episode. I've learned a lot. Thank you. Can you tell us about Angola? Why were South African Special Forces deployed there?
Okay, hi, morning, Chris. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. But let's just take it a little bit back. Now, I'm not going to go into the politics. There's maybe some guys that can give you much more detail on how it started, who was involved. But it started in 1975. The South African Defence Force infiltrating Angola and went as far as close to Luanda. South African Defence Force was supported by America, and I think they didn't. Why they support us, I'm not going to go into that. Just keep in mind, Angola is very rich of oil and diamonds and other minerals. And I think the Americans didn't anticipate that South African Defence Force to move that fast and to be in the outskirts of Luanda, which is the capital of Angola. And then they stopped their support, they withdraw, and then simultaneously the South African Defence Force withdraw. And not long after that, 1976, South African Special Forces was created. There was a need by the rest of the army to have eyes and ears out there before they deploy, either Defence Force, either Air Force, Navy, infantry army, assault groups. There was a lack. There were no special forces in South Africa. There were smaller groups, but not a reconnaissance commander. From the Angola side was MPLA, with their defense force. They were supported by the Cubans, by the Russians, by the East Germans. So yeah, and then of course there were mercenaries as well. Probably they got paid in diamonds or something. And then South Africans, mostly on their own. Just remember, we were also isolated from the rest of the world. And then there was no country that really supported us, especially we had a close relationship with the Jewish guys, more specific need on urban warfare. But it's not if they would supply weapons or anything. That created something very interesting in the South African Defence Force. We had to manufacture everything ourselves. And some of the best platform weapons systems was developed here in South Africa. That was world-leading technology. But yeah, somebody else can actually give a lecture on that.
I will give that in the book. I will definitely just write 2-3 pages just to give a historical background for those who's not familiar with Africa and the history. Basically, the Portuguese fled. Angola, like Mozambique, was a Portuguese colony. And the Portuguese just one day decided to leave, and they just really they lowered their flag after 300 or 400 years, and they just left. And the country then exploded into turmoil. There were different factions. People were being murdered left, right, and center, and they started fleeing south. I don't think you've ever read about this anywhere in the world, but these people were really, really treated very, very badly. They were abused in all possible ways. And then it was let known through Africa leaders, very silently, that the South Africans, being the military force in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, can perhaps restore order. And so they crossed the border with the armored columns and went all the way, as you say, to Luanda. Now, just to put that in perspective, that was the fastest in the world to this very day armor attack and the longest ever in history. military history. And they did this with basically weapons which were not really suitable. The Air Force was quite
Yeah.
but the Army was not, was at the back end of the funding. But from that, as Ezra says, there came all these weapons and came special forces. And I believe there were also former South Africans or South Africans which left the country to fight against the apartheid system. I think they were called SWAPO. They were also to be found there among the Angolan army with the Cuban and Russian and East German support. Okay, I think that describes it quite well. It's a very rich country, Angola. It's a very big country as well. If you can ever visit it, it's a fantastic place. Very beautiful.
Yeah.
Some parts of it. Perhaps you can tell us the terrain you were operating in. We're going to put 2 pictures here, which you sent to me. Thank you for that. One is about loose stones, and the other one says it looks like a little bush. You know the pictures. We can't see them right now, but perhaps you can just tell us what's it like there? Is it raining? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it?
Yeah, of course. I just want to add something. On the northern part of Angola was FNLA. That was also
they attacked from Zaire, from the old Zaire, which became a DRC today, the Congo. They came south, yes.
That's right. And then there was UNITA on the southern part of Angola, and then there was SWAPO, who was actually the northern part of Namibia. And they were living there, but they had their bases situated in Angola, in southern Angola, but I will go into that, what happened there. Yeah. The specific terrain that we operated in was just north of the Namibian border. Now, it's Namibia, and directly north of them is Angola. That's on the west coast of Africa. That terrain is probably the most difficult terrain I ever operated in. There, for the first time, we used our jumpers. That is the boots that you normally jump with, but only local in South Africa. We actually walked with them, because if you look at the rocks and you walk with a 40 kilogram plus rucksack with all the other equipment, it was extremely difficult. And then you would see on the one photo the actual bushes. It was hard thorn bushes. It's not like if you walk against them, it will give away. It's got just thorns that will hook onto you. Very difficult terrain, no shade to lie up.
I recall from the Afrikaans one that you operated, I think you were the team leader of the parachute battalion.
Yes.
Of East National Service. And perhaps we should talk about that, because it wasn't a mission as such, but you people were called in to train them, to assist them there.
Yeah.
I just want to say, we're not talking, strictly speaking, in a time sequence.
Yes.
We're just talking as it comes to our heads. The book will perhaps be a bit more in time sequence.
Yeah.
But for now, we're just discussing. So yeah, perhaps you can tell us about that, because I've got a nice picture of him. Really looking lads, where they're sitting there with their all fours.
Maybe I must talk about the other one first, Koos, because that initiated the paratrooper. Okay. The other one, we were deployed, we were about 8-man team. JC Erasmus was our team leader, a young officer, brilliant guy. And we were deployed in the southern part of Angola. And the Army's need was for us to determine, is there any deployment there? They heard or they intercept radio communication. There may be SWAPO special forces there. So that's where we started to operate.
May I ask you, because I was asked before we forget, what on earth is SWAPO special forces?
Yes, yeah. They were just the better soldiers within SWAPO. And we fought against a lot of different foreigners, from the Cubans, the Russians, Frelimo, Zipra, ZANU, name them. SWAPO is head and shoulders above them. They're more aggressive, they're more organized, they switch on. I wouldn't say more intelligent, probably. But yeah, of all the enemy I encountered, they were definitely head and shoulders above the rest. And they're not like the others. If you hit a contact with them, they will make a stand. They will not run away. And they're not on drugs or eating funny leaves that put them on a trip. They were soldiers like us, each fighting for their cause and beliefs.
Okay, and the best of them became known as the special forces, even if they were not really like the Western idea of special forces, where you have, parachute training, explosives, the usual courses. These were just very good soldiers, very experienced men, the combat experienced guys.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, let's talk about Lieutenant Erasmus.
Yeah.
Patrol.
Yeah, I've got no idea how they were elected or selected. Maybe we can find out with somebody else. Maybe get an ex-SWAPO guy to talk to us.
Well, if there's one, yeah, I would love to speak to you. I know we are getting a former MK officer talking to her. She ended up as a Lieutenant General in the South African Army. And she's a brilliant
yeah.
So, yeah, I'm trying to get all of them. If you are here, you're listening here, you're South African, or you were involved with these things, contact me. I will leave my email address here. Let's talk. We want to hear from you. After all these years, there's no enemy ship anymore. This is history.
Yeah, and for interest's sake, SWAPO wasn't, or the Uvambus. SWAPO comes from the Uvambu tribe, which is one of the 15 or 16 tribes from Namibia. They were actually in the southern part of Angola. And with the first elections, which was an open election, I think the Herero, some of the other tribes in Namibia, actually invited SWAPO to come and vote as well, to make sure they have the majority. And that boomerang on them, because what happened with the next election, SWAPO was the majority, and they became the government. And up till today, they are still the government.
But they're really good,
I would say,
because I've heard only good things about Namibia. It's not like South Africa. I have to say to someone listening here, if you ever want to go visit a fantastic country, it is Namibia. There's really no problems. As we're speaking here today, South Africa is burnt. There's been riots like you've never seen since, well, not even during apartheid. The army is getting involved. It's really bad times in South Africa. We hope that it goes past by the time that you're listening here. But Namibia has none of that nonsense. They have good governance. They just carry on. Of course, there's almost no people there. There's only, 2 or 3 million people in an area 3/4 the size of South Africa.
Yeah, and it's a lot, And I think of all the tribes, I think the Uvambus are probably the better tribe to be the government in Namibia. But okay, so that's where we deployed, and we would normally start 5 o'clock in the morning, but then it's still cool. Remember, temperatures would go up there to close to 40 with no shade. And again, I was carrying the radio. I'm not sure why. At that stage, I was sergeant already. But I was still we ended up with the radio at a circle 30.
But you were also very good with Morse code. Probably that's why they asked you to do it.
Yeah.
But how did you deploy? How did you get into that patrol? Were you jumping like parachute, or did you had other means?
No, we were deployed just across the Kunini River, which forms the border between Namibia and Angola. So we can't remember how we got to the other side. Must have been boats. And we deployed from the real most southern tip of Angola. We started infiltrating up north. And I think we were there about for a week. Then we walked right slab bang into one of their patrols. And it was a very, very short firefight. I remember Lieutenant JC, he shot one of the guys. From our side, there were no casualties. So it was a very quick, it must be 10 seconds, the contact, and then it was over. although
If I
it
can ask
was
you here, and I'm sorry to interrupt you all the time,
no problem.
but what are you looking for when you do a patrol like that? What's the signs? What are you trying to do?
90% your primary, how can I say it? You would listen to noises. Is the vehicles, is the aircraft, is the locals, cattle, all that kind of things, because that was an unknown territory to the South African Defence Force. Nobody ever deployed there, so we were the first to deploy there. So that will be 90% you would listen. And then, of course, you will smell as well. You would smell fire, bushfire. Bushfire could sometimes be caused by guys training, firing tracers, set the bush alight. And then, of course, tracks. And then there was a distinct boot that the SWAPO were wearing. It's like a chevron, V-shape. So, and then if we see a track, we would follow it. But it was very, very difficult to actually follow that in that kind of bushes. Okay, then we moved. We heard vehicles, but it was far, far to the north. In a bush like that, you can hear, especially if you're on a high ground, you will hear 20 k's easily. You can hear the sound of vehicles, specifically if it's early in the morning. So HQ decided that's too far. They want us to stay in the area where we picked up the first contact because they believe there's activities there. So we were lying up on a high ground. And I remember we were just taking our positions. We normally split up to two. And I remember Lieutenant JC was talking, and I said, Lieutenant, you're talking too hard, too loud. They're going to hear us. I think my words were still in the air, and the next moment, the hell broke loose. They were tracking us. They picked up our tracks. And ironically, we were very close to a waterhole. So that was also where they resupplied their water because there were no other sources. And I remember it was like raining leaves from, so they were flying a little bit high where I was lying in JC. And just to my right, but 2 o'clock, there were two youngsters. Ironically, the guy's nickname was Swap. He was SW Prinsloo, so they called him Swap. And the other guy was, I remember his surname now, both youngsters. So what happened, these guys were so close to us that they, thinking back about it, I don't think they were following our tracks. They heard us. And they was just in the same area doing a recce on a waterhole before they go in and replenish water. So they heard us and then came closer. And then one of them fired an RPG-7 directly in our direction where they heard us. So we were on the high ground. They were below, down. And that RPG, it was so close that the booster was still burning, and it hit the tree right above Swapo, and Dupe was the other guy. And that shrapnel just went down, straight down into them. And both of them still had the backpacks on, rucksacks on. And now the firefight was carrying on. And I remember I lobbed a grenade, which was one of the few times that I ever used a grenade, because I could hear from where the shots came from. And you can hear it was very, very close. Afrikaans, they call it knal en dimp. In English, crack and thump. Yeah. So if it's tak-tak, you know, they're very close to you. So when that two extensive noises are very close to each other, you know, whoever's firing on you is very close to you. So I lobbed a grenade, and we fired more like where we think they were. You can't really see them. You can see maybe a puff where they're firing from, and then they withdraw. Okay, then I start giving attention. I gave the radio to one of the guys and said, roll out the antenna. JC was also winded. So I tell him, put up the antenna, the radio, I'll do comms now. And then I start giving attention to the two winded guys. Dupe, I just put a trip on. On Swapo, I took his rucksack off. I think it was already off. And a lot of that shrapnel just went right through his rucksack. That actually stopped a lot of the velocity. And it burned patches, which you still have today, into his back. And the temperature was so high, there was no blood. So the heat actually sealed the wounds as it went through his body. And I actually looked at them before I started with Dupe. I look at both. I see, okay, both is not bleeding. Dupe is bleeding a little bit. And I said, okay, leave Swapo. And I already come back to that words. And then I give attention to both of them. I think on Swapo, I put an intercostal drain because I think some of the shrapnel went actually into his lung. We made communication, and now I must just think if the airlifted us. The airlifted only the three winded guys. Yes, including JC. My facts may be wrong, but I think that's what happened. So we carried on and we withdraw out of the area. And then I think we bumped into civilians. I said, then we know we're now completely compromised. So they gave us an RV quite far. Now we were quite deep. We walked a couple of 100 kilometers already into Angola. So they gave us an RV closer to the riverside. Most probably we walked out, if I remember correctly, or they could have sent Pumas. That's a blank. I would ask some of the other guys that was in the same operation. And well, then we were still back in Ondongwa, and they decided, okay, now we know what's going on there. You're going to deploy now immediately again. They made me the team leader, and they dispatched, must have been a company of parabats to us. So that would be divided into different teams. So a team would consist out of 4 Special Forces operators, and we had 2 Black Scouts. I can't remember from where they came. I think they could have been from 3-1 battalion, which were Bushmen. Yeah, it was from 3-1 battalion. They only consist, it's not 3-2 battalion, 3-1 battalion. So we had 2 scouts, 4 Special Forces operators in about, I would say about 10. That photo we can also place on here. I sent him to you. 10 or 12 paratroopers.
Okay, so I just want to say here, the paratroopers in the South African Army is seen as the elite unit. Not Special Forces, but they are fairly tough guys. They go through their own selection. We spoke about it before. They absolutely hate the guys who's in the tanks, in the panzers, they can't stand each other. You of course came from armor people, but I'm sure they forgave you. So okay, so these were very young, fit, young soldiers, and they under your command, the Special Forces. That too was, I think, rather unique, because you people rarely, if ever, worked with anybody but yourself. I think you only worked with 7 Medical Battalion.
That's correct. And yeah, so it was the first time, I think most probably the last time, that we worked directly with the paratroopers. It was only young guys. I don't think there was any guy with rank. So what I did first, I introduced myself to them, my team, and I explained to them each guy's role. I explained to them how we operate, and we did drills with them, walking, lying up, and so I distributed my guys among them. So the first thing we did, we asked them to bring all the equipment. their chest. They didn't have chest weapons. They just had like a kidney pouches with slings and rucksacks. So I showed them how to pack. There was a lot of junk in their rucksacks, and they pack. They didn't pack practically. And
so how do
yeah,
you
for
pack
them,
practically? What do you do?
Your heaviest equipment must be as close as possible against your back, and preferably high up, not low down, lying on your kidneys. So actually, it will start lining your legs, and if it's at the back, it will start pulling you back the whole time. So it must be as close as possible, as high as possible in your rucksack. Then, of course, your water is distributed. So you must balance your backpack. And then, of course, the equipment that you're going to use every day, that must be easy accessible. And same with them. We also mark them, their blood group, on the shirts. Same with us. And to be honest, I can't remember. We deployed in olive green, Cuban olive green. And I can't remember if they were still in browns.
It looks like it in the pictures. It looks like they were wearing their normal
browns, yeah.
uniform, but it was a bit modified. You know, as troops will do when they're out on patrol, because it's warm there, so you can see some of them got the sleeves off.
Yeah.
But it looked to me like normal South African Army uniform.
Yeah. And then we deployed exactly the same way we deployed. And so we actually warned them beforehand. It's very dry. It's very hot. Remember, you're not using sunblock or sunglasses or things like that. A hat. Your sleeves roll down to protect you against the sun and bushes. And ironically, it rained when we deployed. So we couldn't believe it. It was like being on Hawaii beach, water out of the air. You didn't have to worry about water. So that immediately give us the benefit. We don't have to go to water holes, because we know SWAP will also use the same water holes.
I was about to ask you about that. Is you were talking just now about replenishing the water when you walked into the, let's call it a SWAPO patrol, the one on the Erasmus. Now, you said in the Afrikaans part also, well, before those people were evacuated, the wounded ones, you cleaned up all the bandages. You actually took the time to.
Yes.
So
yeah.
So you left nothing behind. So they could not have known if they shot anybody or anything.
Yeah. So the Sosicon for the pain, the bomb bandages, everything that I used out of my medic bag, I picked up every little thing. So even if they do arrive there, they would not pick up that I've wounded some of our guys.
Yeah, that's excellent soldiering. That's really impressive. But I also want to, if I can ask you, how do you approach a water hallway? Because this is a dry area. I mean, you were lucky now, it started raining, but it's not normally like that. It can rain, of course, there's rain seasons, but the water is actually a dangerous place.
Yes. So what we would do, normally that's also your other challenge, is the locals will come to that area. So what we would do, we would lie up for a very long time, monitoring noise, any voices, see who's coming to the water hole. I remember the one water hole, it was very, very quiet. So then we would send a patrol around. First, we would lie up for a couple of hours.
So you're observing this thing, you would be around it, but you're not close to it, and then you're just listening and watching.
Yeah, listening, yeah. And then I have a line of sight onto the water hole. Normally not the whole team, maybe only 2 guys in front. And that guys will also then come back, give feedback, and then we'll go on a patrol going around the water to the possible ambush sites, normally the high ground. And that way, until we're 100% sure, then it would only be 2 guys. What we will do, we will empty 2 rucksacks, put all the empty water bottles in there, and then only 2 guys will go. 1 guy will do the actual work, filling the water. The other guy will be his eyes and ears, and of course we would be very close to give fire support if anything is there. Yeah, but it's a water hole is actually a killing zone. So you must be very.
You've never heard of an enemy or yourself poisoning these water holes?
No, we only picked up. No, they would never poison it because they have to use it more than us, and the locals also use it, and they get water or food from the locals. So we never poison it because we never know we're going to have to use it again.
But I might ask quickly, if you see the water hole there, you said they were only taking the empty water bottles. So it's not a matter of you now deciding, let me empty all my water bottles because there's water anyway there. You would keep your original water with you and only do the empty bottles.
Of course, yeah, and because remember, that's not crystal clear water. It's normally muddy. But we had what we call malaria tablets, which you have to put in the water, but we never do it because that part, there weren't malaria. Like the northern part of Angola was, there was malaria and bilharzia, but not the southern part. So yeah, but water was water. That's that if you're thirsty, you don't mind if it's muddy.
No, I understand that. I'm just impressed with your soldiering craft, because many lesser people would actually say, well, there's the water. Let's drink as much as we can of our water. We're going to fill it up now, and then you get there, and that water for some reason.
Yeah,
it's out of water, and if you're out of water in that temperature, so you're really screwed.
Yeah,
it's really, really bad. Impressive.
And then we deployed deeper. We actually went further than we went the previous time around, but of course now it was actually started raining before that, so it was a little bit of green around it, and here and there small water pools where we could get water. Whenever you get water, you will fill up.
Could you use the same methods now with the paratroopers around you? Send two, 3 guys, and then you have the close protection.
Yeah.
And they were not talking. I mean, you people are known for being quiet. You never ever speak when you're on patrol. So you got them to keep quiet as well.
Yeah, and they were quiet. So we told them, if you open up your mouth, there's trouble. They were very quiet.
Did one of them call you worm or something?
And we did get some more information on the vehicle movement, which would become another operation, but not by us. And it was actually a low-profile operation, good for us, good for them. And then I remember it was the 1st of April. Don van Zyl, which at HQ, sent us, first he sent me a personal message. He said, remember what is the day today, 1st of April. I said, okay, I take note. And he said, just inform everybody you're going to stay another week. Now I know they're just pulling me up. And you couldn't believe the reaction from some of the guys. They were devastated. Because
when you were joined Special Forces, surely it must have been an honor to work with you people. A great honor. I mean, you never work with Special Forces ever.
Yeah.
You don't even see you people ever.
And then, ironically, before we deployed, I had about 15 of them. We can actually count on that picture. All of them said, yeah, after this, they're going to join Special Forces. And when we came out of there, we had a debriefing, and 1 or 2 guys said, we never knew that you guys are doing such operation. I said, yes, but you know what? This operation are yours, the paratroopers and the infantry work, not Special Forces. It's shallow deployment just over the border or next to the border. We're not supposed to do it. And then they said, they told me afterwards, they never felt so safe in the bush. because of our drills and everything done professionally. And out of the 15, let's say 15, I'm not counting the other teams, none of them joined us.
Well, if one of them perhaps are listening here, come and talk to us. I know I'm speaking to a paratrooper later today. I'm hoping we can record his story. Look, it was a long war. It was a fairly big war in the sense that there was a space for everybody. And special forces are, of course, extremely elite, extremely secretive. So I really enjoyed this one. Are you on that picture which you sent me, is it? The one with a paratrooper standing there?
Yes, I'm at the back, right at the back, more to the right side on the photo.
Okay, great.
You can see the two trackers. They are on the left bottom of the photo. And then it's a mixture of the other four special forces guys, and the rest are all paratroopers. Yeah.
I suppose you had your normal AK-47s and not your...
Yeah,
you can recognize you by your weapons and chest weapon, because that was unique.
And I remember correctly, they were with the R1s. So thinking on top of my head, they most probably deployed with the South African uniforms, and it's only us that had the olive green uniforms on.
I would be for you, if I may ask. I mean, you've actually never deployed in the South African Army uniform. Ever.
No.
But never, you did wear it. Of course, we have pictures of you in the uniform standing around. How did that feel? Is it different for you when you suddenly, I almost say normal, you're part of the army again, you're not somewhere far away?
Yes, yeah, I think, and that was maybe the one thing that we talked about, is that that made it so difficult for the Rhodesian guys to adapt to our army, because we had a distinct military system and rules, where I think when they came back from the bush, they had a much more relaxed atmosphere. With us, it's like back in the army, nobody knew you were deployed. There's no fanfare, banners and flags and welcome home, nothing. You just back, and you even had to do gate duty. Not gate duty, is like a, what do you call it? There was an office in the camp that need to be manned right through the night. So
so you were treated like regular army soldiers. I mean,
exactly.
Once you got back, you're back in the army, and that's fascinating.
Yeah, so it's not if now you're gonna skip that part, but then again, you were deployed out of a year. You could easily be deployed 8 months. When I say 8 months, it's not 8 months continuously. It would be one month or two, you're back for a week, then you deploy again. And normally, if you come back, you will have a week's break, and then you start rehearsing immediately. So everybody hates the gate duties. It's not actually standing in front at the gate. It's like in the middle of the military base. It's just like an ops room.
Just manning the telephones and the radios and things, and which is understandable. But the operations itself were not controlled from the regiment side. They were controlled from Space Corps. Am I correct if I say that?
It was planned there, but if we deployed the let's call it the tactical HQ, will come with you. It will either be like now, this operations, they will be in Udamba. They will operate from there, and they will operate out of Fort Reef, which was the 5-ranking operational base. We even had a deployment from Fort Doppies. I'll come to that operation. Or they will be in Rundu, that long operation we had. Although that one, they were deployed in Rundu. So the tactical HQ will move forward as well into Namibia. They're not behind in South Africa. Okay,
but they will report back to Space Corps, whatever you're reporting to them, right? So they were two different. Perhaps you can tell us about Space Corps. What do we mean when we say?
Yeah, Space Corps is in Valhalla. It's on the western side of Pretoria.
Yes.
And there would be all the officers. I think in my whole life, I've been there, in my career, I've been there less than 5 times. So we never go there. Seldom, very seldom. And then we also had EMLC there. They were the guys that manufactured all these specific, sophisticated equipment for us, like slurry, explosive that is liquid, specific mechanisms. So they were also stationed there. I remember we visited them once to see what they are doing, and they met us. So it was interesting to meet the guys that built it for us. Yeah. So yeah, and then you would have 1 reconnaissance in Durban, 5 in Phalaborwa, and 4 recce in Langebaan, which is the Cape Province. That was the attack divers.
Yes, they were the maritime force. They were the guys on the submarines, or the ones who would bring you from the Navy ships into the shores and then take you out again back to the Navy.
Yeah, they would deploy us.
Missions, I suppose.
Yeah.
I would like to speak to one of them. I'm sure
I would
to us at some stage.
I would get one of the elder guys that is also an attack diver, because there were some unique operations done by them, the attack divers. And I know 1 or 2 of them did pick up lung problems because they weren't diving with compressed air. They were dying with, and now that's totally out of my field, compressed oxygen in a metal tank. So it would go through crystals. The attack divers
can come and explain to us. We would really like to know, because I don't think the story of South African Special Forces can really be told without them. They had a unique function, as well as 5 recce, which was the black soldiers, I believe.
Yeah. And then, of course, with these kind of equipment they used, the attack divers, there was no bubbles going to the top. Remember, the bubbles start small at the bottom and it gets bigger. So if anybody, let's say, for instance, stand on top of a bridge, they can see here's something at the bottom here. And that's not a crocodile or a hippo.
Circuit, so in other words, okay, are you telling me that the crocodile can make bubbles under the water? I'm curious.
No. No, not as far as I know. No. There will only be bubbles when he grabs you.
That happened too. I know about the 4 recce or somebody who, they were diving and they were swimming towards the bridge and got into a fight with a crocodile, which they actually won. And then they came on to Blue the Bridge, and they will have to come and explain this to us. But if you can tell the reader
I will get
something about it.
The perfect guy for that, I'll get the guy that Anton Beertman. That happened to him, and it was at the Quito Bridge. A lot of actions, but you will see what we do. A lot of the ops that I'm going to explain here was concentrating on preventing the build-up towards Quito. Bridges that we blow, the oil depots, tankers that was blown by the attack divers. All that was to slow down the build-up to Quito, because everything was moving to Quito. They were planning to wipe out UNITA, and we prevented that.
Yeah, you stopped it. That we'll talk about Quito Carnival. That is where your career ended.
Yeah.
And that is a damn story on itself, because it was the largest tank battle in Africa after the Second World War. And I believe that the Angolans and Cubans lost 2 brigades of tanks, and those hulks are still standing there, in case somebody wants not to believe me.
Yeah, and we will put some photos up here. I've got a couple of photos of the T-54s. I think there could be T-64s as well, but that was shot out by our tanks, Olifant tank. Olifant is elephant.
Yes, the elephant tanks, which was an upgraded Centurion. It still exists today. It's actually a damn good tank.
Yeah.
The new version of it is quite good. But they also shot them out with missiles, with anti-tank missiles, which were on the Rattles, and of course artillery. And then the artillery were directed by yourself. and the rest of Special Forces. We're going to get to that. You know, the problem talking to you is it's so interesting to me that my brain starts jumping left and right. I'm sure there's going to be complaints. There will be some people who say, just shut up. But sorry, I do get involved here. So forgive me for that. I think we were last, I was distracting you. We were talking about the paratroopers. I think we ended with them. That they didn't join Special Forces as far as you know. But they had a very, very unique opportunity to work with you people. And that must have
yeah, unfortunately, the terrain that we deployed in, unfortunate for them, it was raining. It wasn't that hot. It was a little bit of green there. So we, with JC deployment just a week or two before that, could be, yeah, there were nothing.
But it's interesting, I would like to hear your opinion. I mean, by that time you were like an experienced Special Forces operator. And you must have felt quite old amongst these young, these guys were at school last year. Basically, they went to school and then they joined the army because they were called up. They volunteered. They volunteered for the paratroopers. They're good guys. So what was your opinion on them? As looking back now,
just to keep some clarity, all the operators were all the Special Forces operators were permanent force members.
Okay, perhaps you can explain that too, so that people can understand what you're talking about. That's a regular army. You're a soldier. That's what you do.
Yeah, you were compulsory military service. All young men, when you finish school or varsity, you don't skip that. You get called up for military service. So if you don't want to go to the military, I'm not sure how you can volunteer for the police. You were there.
Yes, you can volunteer for the police, or you can go to the prison service, but then you have to stay longer. Where you stay 2 years army service. It's like in Israel and other places. You get called up as a young man. You have to serve for 2 years in the army. Thereafter, they can call you back for camps. And you stay a reservist until you're, I think, 50 years old or something like that. So they went. They didn't try to get out of it. They went. They must have been recruited at some stage for the paratroopers. They must have made the selection, made the paratrooper training. But they were, in fact, more better known as infantry or as Romeo Mike forces.
They were also.
We were not really doing parachute jumps.
Yeah, when I joined the army in 1977, it was only 1 year compulsory military service, and in my period being there, it changed to 2 years. So but these guys.
When you made your selection of Special Forces, you were then, I wouldn't use the word force, but you were told then to enlist. So when you became a permanent force member.
Yes, you could join for a short term as well, which was 3 years. But none of the guys actually do that because you don't really get the full experience of Special Forces in such a short period. So the longer you stay, the more experience you will pick up, the more you can get qualified in the direction that you want to go. So with these guys, they were all national servicemen. And then, unfortunately for them, it wasn't an easy operation. The nature was against us there. Fortunately, we had no contact there. But yeah, it would have been interesting to see how they react with that.
The morale was good. I mean, after, sorry, once again, I don't have a COVID, but it's raining outside and I walked in the rain. You know, after 1994, when Mr. Mandela became the president, suddenly there came out a whole bunch of books. And I don't want to criticize, but suddenly everybody, you know, was like forced to go to the army, and everybody was like, how can I put it? Actually, a lot more left-wing and radical than what they said at the time. It is absolute nonsense. And they even came out books which said that the war was very unpopular. Now, I don't recall that. So I need to ask you, these servicemen which you work with, these youngsters, were they in any way negative or angry?
No, Not at all. They were, just keep in mind, and that I experienced when I went to varsity, when I did one of my subjects is psychology, is that one of 7 med psychologists told me afterwards, is that we keep in mind that the army get a product out of civilian life. So when they received this 18 years old youngster, he's already formed. His childhood and thereafter what happened to him will have an impact on what kind of soldier he's going to be. And I think of all the youngsters there, I was impressed with them. Keen, fit, eager to do things, eager to listen. None of them had an ego on them. So yeah, they were good soldiers. And I never met any of them afterwards because we never worked with them again. I think
well,
I knew
again, if anybody of them are listening here, please talk to us. I'm sure that you would like to drink a beer with one of them. We'll just there.
It would be interesting to get a hold of one of them. It would be very interesting.
I would ask this other fellow today if he knows about this. When did this happen? Was it about 84?
Yeah, I think around there. Yeah, I think around there, yes. Yeah.
But now you also...
I want to mention the one thing before I forget it, because now it's applicable on my words where I said, leave SWAPO. SWAPO now is the name of one of our guys. And long afterwards, we were both civilians, probably about 5-6 years after that. No longer, probably 10 years. I bumped into him and he said to me, it was like a little bit hostile. And he said, now I've got something to discuss with you. And I said, yes, what is that? He said, why did you say they must leave me? I'm going to die. And now after 10 years, I have to actually tell him what actually happened is that I looked at both of them and I saw SWAPO is not bleeding because all his wounds were sealed. His breathing was 100%. Dupe was more bleeding. So I said, leaving you means that I'm going to attend to you secondly. And I first had to attend to Dupe. Well, that was it.
Well, that I enjoyed to hear because we have to think about it. He would not have known this. I mean, he was loaded in a chopper, the Puma or whatever came to fetch him. And there he left. All he knows in his head is that you said leave him. And then, of course, you never talked about it. But it happens often that you have to make these type of decisions.
Yes.
I think they call it triage or something in medical terms, where you decide, okay, this guy cannot be saved. We're not going to waste time or resources on him.
Exactly.
And we go to a guy which we can actually save. But you mentioned an interesting name here. We haven't mentioned it before. 7 Med. Can you explain to me what is 7 Med?
7 Med is guys that, remember everybody finished the basic, which is exactly the same, the first 3 months. Then you can start qualifying in a direction.
This is the normal army now. This is not you people. This is...
Yes. Yeah, normal army. And they were guys that want to be more experienced on the medical side, supporting the guys in the operational area. So these guys were not left behind in South Africa. They were deployed with, there was a doctor that deployed with us. We will come to that operation. He was initially from 7 Med. So these guys would be the guys that would deploy with a attack group. They would be part of infantry attack or somewhere. So they are infantry initially, and then they become ops, what they call ops medic. Very sought after afterwards when a guy is deployed in Afghanistan with the security forces, with security companies, not security forces. The ops medics were sought after because of the experience. And they would also, with same as us, do the initial medical course where they work in hospitals, and then they get deployed in the operational area. So they're the guy that can keep you alive, patch you up before the doctor takes over. And they have, some of them had more bush warfare experience than some of the doctors, because they were always there up in the medical field. When we did our Halo course, we also had to go to 7 Met. That's where you jump with parachute with oxygen. We also had to go to 7 Met to do the pressure tests, where they put you in a tank and take you up to 20, 35,000 feet, and they let you drop by taking the air out again, or pumping the air in, something like that. That's also part of 7 Met. So that they were very good, very famous, and afterwards they were fortunate that they can get selected. I remember when I sent guys to Iraq, I was always looking for 7 Met operators.
Well, I'm looking for them too, because it's a unit which fascinates me. I believe it was a battalion. If you say 7 Met, you mean the 7th Medical Battalion, and they were, I believe, the only people allowed with you with Special Forces behind enemy lines, without being Special Forces. No one else was allowed, not the intelligence officer, not the spy, only them. And they were very, very good medics. They really know how to treat battlefield casualties. Very, very good.
Yeah, and we must definitely get one of them on the air so they can give us a little bit more background on 7 Met.
Yes, if one of them are listening, yes, I always say to you, let's talk about it, because we don't want to talk to Special Forces only. There were a whole bunch of people who were supporting you.
Yeah,
and we also need the credit, and we want to honor them. There's those parachute packers, the ones in Bloemfontein, those female ladies who were taking the parachutes for us. And I want one of them as well to come and talk to me.
Yes, and I think some of these ops medics were qualified to do parachuting as well, because they have to deploy with these guys.
Yes, I was static line. I believe when I've researched it, it took them a year of intensive training, accumulating into the parachute course, which of course now, once again, now you're back in Bloemfontein with a parachute. Battalions will have their own selection course, and unlike you people, these medics had to pass that selection as well. Before they could even get to the parachute course. Once they passed that, then they patched as operational medics. It's no wonder that they are in such demand. Many of them, I think, went on and became paramedics at advanced life support. You find them, and they're still good. I think, isn't it true, we're jumping around a bit, but afterwards, it was after you left the army, South Africa invaded Lesotho, it Swaziland? Lesotho, I believe. There was some kind of trouble where South Africa had to go in. I think it's Operation Bolias. I know our sponsor writes about it. And that is where the 7 Met worked again with the new Special Forces, as I can call them that. And they did very well during that. There were a lot of other problems there as well. Bolias really showed what happened when you remove all the experienced officer corps, and people started leaving the army like you couldn't believe, and suddenly they had to do something in a different country, and they really struggled, but they got the job done. They really got the job done, and I believe that is where a 7 Met doctor or medic anyway was killed.
Yes. Correct,
Okay. We've been talking, Ezra, would you believe, an entire hour now. So I think we should leave us now and start a new episode.
Yes.
Because I've been told that some of the episodes which I've made for other people was an hour and a half, and it's not that they fall asleep, it's just that they just don't have the time. And they have to come back. So we'll try to keep it within an hour. We've been speaking an hour now. And is there anything else you want to say about those two operations, the one with your officer? Okay, so we can move on to the next.
Correct.
Then I will say to you, thank you for this. We'll start a new recording. I really enjoyed it. I can't believe it is an hour.
Sure. I've never talked so much for so long.
No, that's true. I don't think you've ever spoken this much, but that's me myself. I mean, I can feel my voice going.